Okay, so today we're diving deep into the world of Anthony Blomfield's CV.
And let me tell you, it's not your average resume, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, this thing is extensive. It's like he's chronicling decades of tech history.
It really is, like a timeline of the industry itself.
Hmm.
First thing that struck me, the length. Most people try to keep it brief.
Right, one page, two max. But this is a statement. Could it be a sign of the times, though? Are we moving away from that traditional straight and narrow career path?
It's interesting, isn't it? Maybe in this field, a portfolio career is becoming the norm. People switching gears, trying new things constantly.
Makes you wonder what employers think, right?
Uh-huh.
Does a long CV signal experience or just, like, indecision?
Good question. I guess it depends what's on end those pages, not just how many there are.
True enough. And speaking of what's on the page, one thing that's impossible to miss is the way Anthony showcases his technical skills.
Front and center. Like, this is who I am, this is what I do.
And it makes sense, right? Tech is everything these days.
You can't mistake it. Even if you're not coding all day, every job's got that digital edge now.
Exactly. So you got to speak the language, even if you're not fluent, right?
Exactly. And looking at Anthony's skills, it's fascinating, really. He's got the classics like Linux, Unix.
The bedrock, right? The stuff that never goes away.
Exactly. But then, bam, he's got React.js, Firebase,
Yeah.
these cutting-edge technologies, too.
So he's adaptable, right? He can work with the old and the new, the tried and true, and the bleeding edge.
Exactly. So I'm comfortable in both worlds. That's valuable, especially with companies always trying to keep up with the latest and greatest.
It's like being a mechanic who can fix a Model T in a Tesla.
Exactly. Now, on top of all the tech skills, there's this whole other layer to Anthony's CV that we need to unpack. The entrepreneurship.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really interesting. Digital Generation New Zealand,
Yeah.
UPP Enterprises,
Hmm.
he's not afraid to strike out on his own.
Multiple times. And that raises the question, is this the famous side hustle culture we hear so much about, especially in the tech world?
Right. Is it a plus or a minus in the eyes of an employer? Passionate go-getter or easily distracted?
Hard to say. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you're demonstrating initiative, ambition. On the other hand, are you fully committed to one path?
Makes you wonder what his motivations were for starting these companies.
Exactly. Were they passion projects or stepping stones to something bigger? We'll have to dig deeper into that.
And you can't talk about Anthony's entrepreneurial spirit without mentioning some of those company names.
Twilight Zone Engineering Limited. Come on, that's fantastic.
I know, right? Talk about standing out from the crowd. It's like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
So we've got this blend of traditional employment and entrepreneurial ventures. We've got this impressive display of technical prowess, both old school and cutting edge. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's time to roll up our sleeves and decipher some of the specific technical jargon he's using.
You mean terms like GCE, VPS, Docker? Because honestly, those sound a bit like a foreign language to me.
Don't worry, I'm here to translate. Let's start with GCE, which stands for Google Cloud Engine.
Okay, so we're talking about the cloud, like
Yeah.
where I store my vacation photos. Sort of, but on a much, much larger scale. Imagine being able to rent virtual machines, run applications, store massive amounts of data, all within Google's data centers. That's GCE in a nutshell.
So it's like having access to a supercomputer without the supercomputer price tag.
Exactly. And for businesses, especially startups, this is huge. Scalability and reliability without breaking the bank. The fact that Anthony lists GCE specifically suggests he's worked with cloud-based solutions.
Which these days is about as fundamental as knowing how to use a mouse and keyboard.
Pretty much. Okay, now how about VPS? This one often trips people up.
VPS. It does sound a bit like a secret code or something.
It stands for Virtual Private Server. Imagine renting an apartment in a large building. With a VPS, you get your own dedicated resources, your own space that you don't have to share.
So more control, more privacy than, say, sharing a server with a bunch of other websites.
Exactly. It's like upgrading from a studio apartment to a penthouse suite. You've got more room to breathe, more flexibility to customize.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, for the real head-scratcher, Docker. It sounds more like something you'd find at a shipyard.
I know, right? But trust me, it makes sense in the software world, too. Imagine you're shipping goods overseas.
Okay, I'm picturing cargo ships, those giant metal containers.
Exactly. You wouldn't just throw everything in the hull of the ship in one big jumbled mess, would you?
Hopefully not. That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It would be chaos. So you use containers to separate and organize everything for efficient shipping. That's essentially what Docker does for software. It lets developers package their applications and all the bits and pieces they need to run smoothly.
Into these neat little digital containers.
Precisely. So no matter where the software ends up, a developer's laptop, a testing environment, a live server, it runs the same way every time.
It's like the software equivalent of some assembly required, but everything you need is already in the box.
Exactly. No more "it works on my machine" excuses. Docker helps streamline the entire software development process.
And I'm guessing this Docker thing is pretty important these days.
Hugely important. It's a key player in what we call CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment. Basically, it helps automate the process of building, testing, and releasing software. It's like having a well-oiled machine for software development.
So Anthony's inclusion of Docker tells us he's not just keeping up with the times, he's embracing the tools and techniques that are shaping the future of how software is made.
Exactly, and that's what's so fascinating about this deep dive. It's not just about understanding individual technologies in isolation, it's about seeing the bigger picture, the interconnectedness of it all.
Okay, so we've got a handle on Anthony's technical skills, but now I'm curious about the actual work experience. Where did he get his start?
Well, looks like his first foray into the professional world was at AppleCare, as Tier 2 support, no less.
Ah, the front lines of tech support. Dealing with those issues that go beyond a simple factory reset, I imagine.
Exactly. He honed those problem-solving skills early on. And from there, he moved on to system engineer roles, creative folks, then Digital Generation New Zealand.
Creative folks, that's an interesting name. Hints at a connection to design, media, that sort of thing.
Right. And when you consider the later mention of media design school, it makes you wonder if there's a deeper connection there. Like maybe he was drawn to those fields, even if his main focus remained technical.
It's like he always had an eye on the intersection of creativity and technology.
Yeah, like he wanted to be where those two worlds collide. And speaking of connections, Digital Generation New Zealand pops up several times in this CV.
It's a recurring theme for sure, almost like a home base he keeps returning to.
Could be loyalty to the company or maybe a deep connection to their mission, especially since he was more than just an employee there.
True, he was a founder director for a time, so he had a hand in shaping things from an early stage. That entrepreneurial spirit was already in play.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, can we talk about the London chapter? Twilight Zone Engineering Limited. What a name.
Seriously, it sounds like a rock band or a secret society.
It definitely makes you want to know more, right?
Yeah.
Did he pick the name? What does it say about the company culture? Were they trying to stand out?
In a place like London, you got to do something to get noticed. It's a global tech hub, tons of competition.
Exactly. So maybe that name was their way of saying, hey, we're here, we're different, come see what we're about.
I bet they had a killer office space too.
Probably. But name aside, the London move itself is telling. Going from New Zealand to a place like that takes guts. He was ready to test himself on a bigger stage.
Embrace new challenges, work with people from all different backgrounds. It probably pushed him outside his comfort zone in the best way possible.
And then he comes back to New Zealand and steps into the CEO role at Digital Generation. Talk about a homecoming.
He went from fixing computers to leading an entire company. That's impressive.
It really is. He clearly had a vision for the future of the company and the ability to rally people around it. But it doesn't stop there, right? Then we've got Digital Generation International, UPP Enterprises, UPP Social.
The man is a serial entrepreneur, if I've ever seen one.
Oh.
It's like he can't stop creating new things.
It's that restless energy, that constant drive to innovate. And it's not just about building businesses either.
Right. He's got social impact and sustainability peppered throughout his CV. It's like he wants to make the world a better place, not just a more profitable one.
Exactly. There's a sense of purpose there that goes beyond just making money. He wants to make a difference.
So we've got this incredible journey from tech support to CEO, from New Zealand to London and back again, from individual contributor to company leader. It's pretty inspiring, actually.
It really is. And if there's one word to sum it all up, I think it's adaptability. Anthony has constantly reinvented himself, embraced new challenges, and never stopped learning. That's a powerful lesson for all of us, no matter what field we're in.
It's a good reminder that a career isn't always linear. Sometimes it's about taking detours, discovering new passions, and being open to unexpected opportunities. Who knows what Anthony will get up to next?
I'm excited to find out.
So we've gone through his technical skills, we've traced his career path. It's been quite the deep dive. But what's the takeaway for our listeners? What can we learn from a CV like Anthony's?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And I think Honestly, one of the biggest lessons here is the importance of being a lifelong learner. Anthony's CV, it's not just a list of jobs, it's a testament to constantly evolving, constantly adding new skills to the repertoire.
Never gets stale, never rests on his laurels. He seems to always be looking for the next challenge, the next thing to master.
Absolutely. And it's not just about acquiring new skills in isolation, but connecting the dots, seeing how different experiences can build on each other. We talked about his early interest in those more creative fields. Remember creative folks?
Right, and how that later played into his entrepreneurial ventures, that blend of technology and design media.
Exactly. Those early experiences weren't just jobs, they were laying the groundwork for something bigger, absorbing knowledge, finding inspiration, even if he didn't know it at the time.
It's like he was building his own internal database of ideas, and then boom, they start to combine and create something new.
Precisely. And that, I think, is a huge takeaway for anyone, regardless of their career. Stay curious, keep your eyes open, because every experience, every interaction can be a learning opportunity. You never know when those dots will connect down the line.
You've got to be open to those unexpected detours because sometimes they lead to the most interesting destinations.
Absolutely. And, another key point Anthony's CV highlights is that it's not enough to just have technical skills. You need that broader vision, too. He's not just a tech whiz, he's a leader, an entrepreneur who understands the big picture. He's not just building things, he's building towards something.
It's like knowing how to use a hammer and nails is one thing, but understanding how to build a house, that's a whole other level.
A perfect analogy. And it brings us to a final, I think, provocative question that this CV raises. Is it more valuable in today's world to be a specialist or a generalist?
Oh, that's a tough one. Because there's arguments to be made on both sides.
Exactly. On one hand, you've got the deep expertise, the mastery of a specific niche. That's incredibly valuable, especially in certain fields. But then you've got the generalists, the ones who can adapt to different roles, spot connections others might miss.
And I think Anthony's story shows that you don't necessarily have to choose just one path. He's shown depth and breadth throughout his career.
Absolutely. The key is to find what resonates with you, what aligns with your goals and your personality, but never stop exploring, never stop learning.
Well said. It's been quite a ride, dissecting Anthony's CV.
Yeah,
I feel like we've learned a lot, not just about the tech industry, but about the importance of adaptability, resilience, and constantly pushing ourselves to grow.
couldn't agree more. And with that, we'll leave our listeners with plenty to think about. Anthony's journey is proof that in the world of technology and in life, the possibilities are truly limitless.